Once upon a time, our reporter Oliver Glasenapp had a record that told the story of Snow White. He listened to it hundreds of times. The fairy tale images are etched in his brain. Lately, he's read that Lohr am Main is the birthplace of Snow White. Is it a marketing gimmick, or is there something more to this claim? In Lohr Castle, KARL-HEINZ Bartels has unearthed lots of evidence. It suggests that the brothers Grimm were inspired by a specific family who lived in this castle. Bartels is a pharmacist by trade, but his passion lies in fairy tales.
Snow White's father was a very high-ranking official, almost king-like in stature. There was a stepmother who evidently favored her own children.
This is reputedly the stepmother's famous mirror. It doesn't talk, but it does have these inscriptions. She is as beautiful as the light on one side and love yourself on the other. This intricate object was made by the local glass company.
We always say, if Snow White really existed, then she was born in Lohr.
And that's how this town declared itself to be the birthplace of a fairy tale figure. A new sculpture is intended to underline this claim. And that's another draw to the town, to look at a new Snow White statue, as hundreds of tourists are likely to do in the future. It was designed by sculptor Peter WITTSTADT, who was eager to give us a preview of the plaster figure in his garden. It's not a traditional rendition, and it's almost too much for Oliver. At first, one may think of Medusa, the figure from Greek mythology whose head was covered in snakes. It bears no resemblance to the image most people have of a girl of delicate beauty.
I didn't set out to go against the grain or to be deliberately provocative, despite what people say. I think that I've developed my own style, and I want to remain true to that. And that's the reason for this figure.
His Snow White has sparked controversy in the town. One poll shows that 90% of the town's inhabitants don't like the sculpture. They say the artwork isn't fitting for Lohr. And they can't understand why the town has shelled out more than 100,000 euros for it. People feel so strongly about it that they've set up a discussion group. It's a task force intended to stop municipal art being chosen without any public consultation.
A work of art should give me pleasure and not repel me. I shouldn't have to think about it for hours. The feel-good factor is very important.
I understand that artists don't necessarily always want to conform to beauty ideals, but flying in the face of them like that is being far more provocative than art needs to be, even if it should perhaps provide food for thought.
Über den nötigen Denkanstoß, den Kunst vielleicht geben sollte, hinausgeht.
Mayor Mario Paul is the man who has to deal with the poisoned apple left behind by his successor. He needs to find a way to smooth ruffled feathers. But he feels he has no choice but to keep the expensive statue. A contract is a contract.
Snow White is a blessing and a curse. On one hand, she's a well-loved figure. On the other, it's not always easy to deal with this legacy. People keep on saying that they don't want a Disney town. We don't want any Snow White kitsch.
But isn't kitsch what fairy tales are all about? About fulfilling hidden desires. More importantly, what would the brothers Grimm think of the modern sculpture? Even though the new sculpture is largely unpopular and doesn't quite fit here, not everyone dislikes it.
You can develop your taste to get used to a certain kind of aesthetic, and the more often I see the thing, the more I like it. And if I see it in bronze one day, then it has a very different effect than just seeing the picture in the newspaper that I know.
The statue in Lohr has nothing in common with Oliver's idea of Snow White. So he may have to rethink his childhood perception. For one thing, most would agree the real Snow White probably didn't have such a mischievous smile.